What is up, everybody? Welcome to the AllSooners Podcast. Wednesday, August 2nd, right? Yesterday was August 1st, and it was Tuesday. Ryan, we're at episode 198. That is Ryan Chapman. He's over in Moore. I'm John Hoover. I do this part of the show in Tulsa, and of course, later on, Randall Sweet is going to step in. He's going to talk about OU recruiting, and boy, do we have some recruiting to get to. But first, Media Day. For us, Ryan, for media, for people who have dedicated their lives and their livelihood to covering college football, covering specifically, in this case, this team, the Oklahoma football team, yesterday was kind of the start of the unofficial, start of the season. Big 12 Media Days is like the trip home from vacation. This is like the actual first official work day. Not that we didn't work in Arlington, but yesterday, Ryan, 11 coaches and 19 players, good Lord, came to the Stadium Club, descended on the Stadium Club, and we got to talk to every one of them. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was great, too, because something that no one really cares about, I guess, but in our world, it's one of those things of there's a billion outlets and we all work for our own outlets, but you're friends with, the others. So it's like that first day of school.
It is.
When you come back and you see all the friends that maybe you don't hang out with, you don't know them all well enough to hang out with them outside of school, but everyone's back together. So you had that energy. Plus, like you mentioned, we got to talk to every coordinator, every assistant coach, a ton of players, and you could kind of feel the energy, feel the excitement, especially like from Brent Venables at Big 12 Media Day. It's a different platform. It's a different atmosphere. You're in a huge stadium with everything's really spread out. And Brent Venables is kind of more reserved in that situation. And yesterday you could see there were a couple of times as he started answering the questions, you could tell, hey, camp's kicking off on Thursday. There's that kind of excitement in the air. And I think that for this Oklahoma staff and for the returning players, they know year one, it was setting a foundation. They didn't get any of the results they wanted on the field. And I think that they're all really eager to go out and almost embrace that we understand that last year wasn't good enough. And we're trying to show you that by making huge leaps forward, that last year wasn't in vain because we did a lot of really important foundation setting. And I think that's kind of a little bit of a chip on everyone's shoulder that you kind of saw yesterday.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree completely. There was a little bit of a chip on everyone's shoulder. They know that 6 and 7 was not the standard. Talking to Miguel Chavis, talking to Jay Valai, a couple of more of the more outspoken coaches on the staff, less reserved, may be a good way of putting it. Those guys they've got their sleeves rolled up, they've got their fists doubled up, they've got their jaw set, and they're ready to go in and say, let's practice. Thursday starts practice for the Sooners. After that, I think there's media availability on Friday, so we'll hear from Brent Venables post-practice on Friday. That'll be Friday early afternoon. We'll have some stuff for you at allsooners.com, of course. And then Saturday's the Meet the Sooners Day, Meet the Fans Day, however you're going to say it. The Sooners get to meet the fans. And after that, it's kind of the whole, 2 days of practice, and then they meet the fans, and then you've got kind of a quiet weekend. And then I think next week begins the full eval, install, hard work, full pads next week. So, yeah, this team's got some things to prove, man. Let's start, Ryan, at the top with, talking to Brent Venables yesterday. He confirmed, due to a question, kudos to James for asking the question, because a lot of everybody in the room knew what was going on, but to have the head coach talk about it, it took somebody to ask the question. And our man James did that. Julie Venables has breast cancer, and Brent confirmed that yesterday. She had the diagnosis was on June 16th. She had surgery last Friday. Brent said just a couple of words from his assessment. He said it's a knock you off your feet type of diagnosis. Said it took him back to 2005 when he was talking to his mother about having stage 4 cancer. He said there's no blueprint. He said their sanctuary is faith and prayer. So that I thought that was really revealing. He talked about the administration at the university. He talked about the support staff he's got there, or the support group he's got there at OU. And he called his wife a honey badger. He said she's fighting through this thing. She's tough. She's a former nurse, so she knows what's up. But all prayers and good feelings, good vibes to Mrs. Venables. Julie is in everybody's thoughts and prayers right now for sure.
Yeah, and it's just one of those. It takes you back to we do so much of football, and Brent Venables is a head coach that is happy to get down in the weeds on all the football stuff. And it was it's obviously a tough moment. It's been a tough stretch of moments for the family. And as you said, I think everyone's in the same spot with everyone's thoughts are hoping for the best case scenario, the best case news there. But it also just gave you a glimpse of, we've seen it in pockets, right, where Brent Venables, and they're very different. I don't mean to compare them, but when I talk about seeing just the emotion, seeing the Brent Venables that wears everything on his sleeve, I remember back to the Nebraska week, him talking about some of the reaction to OU Nebraska, the big win in 2000. There have just been a couple of those moments, and it was another time where you could tell that Brent was choosing his words very carefully, and that he was overcome, as anyone would be, with a lot of emotion in that moment. And I just think you see this is why Brent Venables, everywhere he goes, has a reputation of being genuine. What you see is what you get with him, and I think it's why he's connected with so many coaches, players all throughout his career. And it's why when you hear people talk about that family atmosphere at Oklahoma, you can see it, the way that he values his family and talks about his family, then talks about taking care of his coaches, his players, all that stuff. It doesn't often bleed through altogether, but that was a moment there. So hoping for the very, very best for Mrs. V and everything going on with the families. I can't imagine having to deal with that, much less on the cusp of the calendar really firing back up for this football program.
Yeah, he said the surgery was successful. He said they think they got everything. The doctors feel confident they got everything that they went in there to get. And it had not reached her lymph nodes, so it's not like it's spreading to the rest of her system. But so best possible outcome following that surgery. We got our fingers crossed. Ryan, let's talk about a question that, or an answer to a question that you asked yesterday. An injury roundup. Brent Venables was not prepared in that setting to give us a full injury report. I think it slipped his mind. But your question was, everybody's healthy, right? And he's like, no.
Well, it was something that, coming out of spring, there just been a ton of stuff that we hadn't really gotten official updates on, reporting behind the scenes, things we've heard, all that stuff. But I just figured, frankly, hey, why don't we just set the table for what we should be asking about, what we shouldn't be too concerned about during fall camp. And kind of started with the tight end room. Caden Helms did not sound great from Brent Venables. He didn't really have a timeline, said he's working and fighting like heck to get back. But that would be, it sounds like one less option for a little bit there in the tight end room. Jason Llewellyn, better news, sounds like he's back on track. Jacob Sexton, who tore his ACL in that third play of the Cheez-It Bowl, he is ahead of schedule on his recovery, but it's an ACL. Jacob Sexton's really young, and frankly, they don't need him to play left tackle with Walter Rouse. And so he said, Brent Venables did, that mid to later September is the timetable, and they're not going to rush Jacob Sexton, though he is healing up a lot faster than what it originally had looked like. So that's great news on the Sexton front. Brennan Thompson, some tonsils, so he'll maybe miss a practice or two, be back in it. JJ Hester, wide receiver who had his 2022 campaign take with injuries, did not sound like he was going to be really a factor either. Flip over to the defensive side of the ball. Robert Spears-Jennings still recovering from that labrum surgery in the spring. Jacob Lacey, the very scary blood clot diagnosis, where Brent Venables said testing-wise and everything, it's all been good, but we kind of have a little bit of experience dealing with that, unfortunately, dating back to kind of Jalen Redmond and what happened with him early in his career. We know they're going to be very cautious. So I think there had been a lot of wondering of, hey, going out and get not just DJ Terry, but also Philip Pea. in the post-spring? Did that mean that Lacey wasn't going to be a factor? So there was all of that, but I thought another notable thing, John, someone who was not mentioned in the injury report was Gentry Williams, who was a full go all the way through summer for the workout portion and should be rearing and ready to go as they enter fall camp, coming off of his really scary close to winter workouts.
Yeah, that was my next topic, was Gentry Williams. Man, what here's a guy who literally fell out of workouts, missed some time in the spring, came back during the spring, but the way you phrased it, we were talking before the show, hype train, the Gentry Williams hype train. I think it was Ted Roof, and I know it was Brent Venables, who both said they were looking forward to the competition this two-a-days, this training camp. I don't think they have any two-a-days anymore. The competition this training camp at cornerback. Everybody talked about Woody Washington's got that one. Sure, the one side locked down. The other side's up for grabs. And Gentry Williams is at the front of the train, along with Kendall Dolby, the JUCO guy. Maybe a couple of young corners in there. Maybe they're going to move one of those safeties who's so good at safety but can't get on the field at safety. Maybe they move one of those guys over there. We'll see how that goes, but Gentry Williams right now leading the charge at that spot.
Yeah, and I spent 20 minutes talking with Jay Valai in kind of a scrum setting there, and I wanted to stick with Jay Valai through – if you've never seen how this kind of works, everybody's out at tables all at once for a period of time, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever. And so a lot of people bounce in and out, which means that coaches answer some of the same questions over and over. There's a lot of forgive me if you've already answered this, wasn't here. I wanted to stick with Jay Valai long enough to hear the second round of Gentry questions just to kind of see. He's a really energetic guy. So this energy that Jay Valai was giving, is that because he was super energetic and it was the very start of his media session, or is that because he is that excited about Gentry Williams and is able to rev it up 2 or 3 times, if that kind of makes sense? And Jay Valai was really stoked about Gentry Williams every time he talked about him. He mentioned not just the weight that he's put on, almost 20 pounds since he arrived at Oklahoma, for the strength aspect of it. He was talking about, and I asked him, could you sense Gentry having to stand by in the spring early on when he wasn't cleared, seeing those young guys go out there? We heard a ton about Josiah Wagner, all that. Did you kind of sense like he was, okay, I'm ready to go into the summer? And Jay Valai's like, Gentry Williams was ready to go day one of spring. We couldn't put him out there day one of spring, but he wants to go out. He wants to compete. And I think that Woody Washington, though his spot's not up for grabs, is going to be key to help bringing him along. I think our guy Randall is going to have a story on AllSooners.com Friday morning about Woody Washington's leadership. But part of what Jay Valai talked about was how when C.J. Colden started picking the ball off last year, that was almost like a reinforcement to the buy-in of you can be aggressive, you can be hyper-aggressive and get the results, everything that Jay Valai is asking of him. That was infectious through the room, and now Jay Valai is wanting Woody to be that kind of spark for Gentry, to be that guy. So Gentry sounds like in the meeting rooms, Jay Valai talked about him being incredibly prepared, wanting to always be the first guy to answer all those questions, prove that he's ready, and it sounds like he's stoked to see Gentry go out there and compete, and I would be shocked, barring anything bad, knock on wood, helmet, chin strap is snapped for the first play of the game, something like that, if it's not Woody and Gentry as your first crack at corners in Oklahoma.
Yeah, sounds like that's heading that direction. The other cornerback spot is a spot where no one has any real starting game experience or prolonged college football experience. It's not that way at safety, where they've got some guys who have played the position. It's just they're trying to find the 2 or 3 best guys for that. That was one of the other positions that Brent Venables said he was looking forward to seeing the competition. I think that question was from our man Randall. What positions are you looking forward to watching in competition this year? He proceeded to throw out like 21 different positions. But, all joking aside, safety was one of the first ones. And that's interesting to me, Ryan, because they've got so many names and so many accomplished players and a 5-star coming in and stuff like that. So that's a position that's going to be, I think, and we did kind of a what was it called, a camp predictions before yesterday, going into yesterday, and I think you picked the safety position as the best or most compelling position where there's going to be competition this year.
Yeah, and I think it's because there are a bunch of spots on the field. Left guard, there's going to be competition, but from guys we haven't seen play at Oklahoma. Wide receiver, competition, a bunch of guys we haven't really seen play at Oklahoma. The safety position's unique because you've got Billy Bowman, who's a 2-year returning starter, one of those in Alex Grinch's nickel. Last year at safety, he had like a little bit of an injury, so it wasn't the whole year, but he was able to work back. Key Lawrence, who's played in this defense for 2 years. His best results have not come at safety, but they wanted to move him back to safety last year. You bring in Reggie Pearson. You bring in the excitement for a Peyton Bowen. And it feels like with as much as Brent Venables talked about that 3-3-5 setup last year and being able to get an extra defensive back on the field, there's room for 3 safeties back there at points. There's room for Reggie Pearson or Peyton Bowen have both been talked about as guys that could work at Cheetah throughout the spring if that's something they want. I just feel like they really feel, this coaching staff, that safety spot could be the strength or one of the strengths of this defense. And I'm interested to see how they work in the different ways they try to get those guys on the field, if that kind of reinforces that they really like pretty much all their options back there.
Yeah, another thing Brent said was we might have a new front seven, an all-new front seven with the exception of Danny Stutzman. Stutzman's coming back, led the third in the nation in tackles last year, led the Big 12, all that stuff. We know that. Stutzman's coming back. Could there be a possibility that the other 7, it's not really 7, it'll be 6 positions, are new guys? That's something that, including the linebacker. Connor Neer is the Division II transfer from Ferris State. He came yesterday. Very good interview, very compelling talker. By the way, if you guys want to, when this podcast is over, you're done listening, go to allsooners.com or my YouTube channel and jump in there and start watching these player videos, get to know some of these new guys especially. The coaches are up there. I can't recommend enough. Philip Paya, he is my favorite new guy in terms of interviews on this team. But linebacker is going to be interesting. It's kind of like the cornerback spot. The one linebacker spot is held down by a returning starter, Danny Stutzman. The other one kind of up for grabs.
Yeah, and at Big 12 Media Day, we heard Brent Venables talk 2 or 3 times about Connor Neer. Yesterday, it was just kind of an acknowledgement from Ted Roof that he's coming in having to learn a new language on top of making that jump up from Ferris State to D1, not just D1, but the Big 12, not just the Big 12, but Oklahoma, right? So you've got that plus a lot of the Jaron Kanik, who we didn't hear as much about at Big 12 Media Day, and suddenly you had the Brent Venables talking about Jaron Kanik and Danny Stutzman being Pete and repeat of like everywhere that Danny Stutzman goes, Jaron Kanik goes, and he's trying to absorb film, all of the experience that Stutzman has at playing linebacker that Kanik just doesn't have because he hadn't played linebacker before last year. So that's going to be a spot that's really interesting. You've also got Okobe McKenzie in there, who was on the redshirt plan last year. I'm fascinated to see what that rotation looks like and how those snaps get chopped up, because we know more than anything what Oklahoma doesn't want is 2 guys, whether it's Stutzman and Kanik, Stutzman and Neer, whatever, playing 95 to 100% of those snaps at linebacker again, because that's something that Brent Venables talked about all throughout the spring at Big 12 Media Days, and competitive depth is the buzzword of yesterday.
Yeah, competitive depth got mentioned 20 times, 25 times maybe. It's a buzz phrase. It's a buzzword that the coaching staff is looking at, leaning on, and searching for. Really, competitive depth. Listen, we've heard the phrase before, but there's no doubt these guys. The depth is better. Jeff Lebby last week, for instance, at the annual preseason coaches luncheon, he made mention of the phrase. He said something along the lines of the issues that we faced last year are nothing compared to the issues, or I'm sorry, the issues that we face this year are nothing compared to the issues that we faced last year. Yesterday at the press conference for Media Day, I asked him to clarify those, and the way he painted the picture was he was strictly talking about depth. He's not talking about discipline or bad people or anything like. Strictly talking about depth. So I thought that was interesting as well. I'll tell you what we'll do, Ryan. We talked extensively about the defense reaction to the press conferences yesterday and Media Day. We'll come back in the second segment and we'll talk about the offense. We'll talk about reaction from the offensive coaches. Got some really good stuff coming up. More from Media Day, plus Randall and tons of recruiting in the segment 3. We got party at the Palace was quite the party, apparently, because the commitments are rolling in right now. All that's next on the AllSooners Podcast. On Twitter, why don't you guys give us a follow at all_Sooners. I'm at John E. Hoover, and Ryan is at Ryan Chapman. You can always find Ross. Hey, congratulations to Ross, by the way. He's getting married this week. Ross is getting me. Our little Ross is getting married this week. Send him a tweet and congratulate him at Ross Lovelace on Twitter. And then Randall is at Randall Sweet 5. He's not getting married this week, but watch out. Those young guys, they tend to get married at a young age. I'm telling you.
I was about to say, did you let those guys know that, like, I broke a mold of hiring because like the first week we had Josh was like, and I'm getting married on the honeymoon.
Yeah.
Ross has been engaged for a hot minute here. Like, did you let Randall know? Or maybe does Randall's girlfriend need to know, like, hey, careful, the AllSooners crew. Big things happen. All I got was like a Chelsea Champions League victory, which I'll actually take over any of that. That sounds good.
You need a championship more than you need a wife. And don't forget Parker, our original man, the guy who preceded you. He's getting married Saturday as well. So congratulations to both of those guys.
You're next, Scout the Dog.
Scout the Dog will not be getting married anytime soon. Come on. And I've been married for going on 32 years. My anniversary's coming up. So wish me happy anniversary. The website, of course, allsooners.com, Fan Nation affiliate. Says so right here. Part of the Sports Illustrated Network. Remember, AllSooners is free. No signups, no emails, no passwords, no credit cards. It's all free for you, AllSooners. Ryan, we talked defense in the first segment, reaction from Media Day. Let's talk some offense. Left guard, wide open. Left tackle, set. Center, set. Right guard, apparently is set with the guy who played left guard last year. Right tackle, set. Left guard, wide open. And I'm interested to learn more about this position.
Yeah, it's shaping up to kind of be what anyone who was asking the question, Savion Byrd, Troy Everett, who was an Appalachian State transfer coming in. He's got experience along the interior of the offensive line, played a little center as well for the Mountaineers. Anyone who was asking those questions, I think those were all validated and backed up yesterday as Jeff Lebby basically, like you mentioned, rolled out there, was like, yeah, Walter Rouse at left tackle, Tyler Guyton at right tackle, McKay Mattier, who has apparently taken a huge step up as a leader at right guard, Andrew Rame at center. There's one spot there. And so we know through the spring, Jeff Lebby talked about Savion Byrd. He's got to make those jumps technique-wise to pair with his physicality that I think everyone was really excited about, but also keeping his weight up. And so that was just going to be something of, for me, tracking how Bill Bedenbaugh feels about that, because I feel like the coach's view, keeping your weight up and be at the playing weight you need to, is, are you taking care of all those little things with Jerry Schmidt, with the nutrition staff? And you know Bill Bedenbaugh, what he demands of his offensive line. If you're not taking care of the little things, you're not going to win a starting job. And so it'll be interesting to see how Bill Bedenbaugh kind of speaks about that throughout camp, just because that was a huge question for Savion Byrd in the offseason. And I'm just not sure that Bill Bedenbaugh, I don't think he was like negative towards Savion Byrd, but I also don't think he came in and was just blown away like, oh, he did everything we need. He's exactly firing on all cylinders, all of that, as far as Savion's weight coming off the summer. You
know how, going into bowl season, you get the 12-game notes package and you look at the guys who were in the starting lineup, like quarterback, you're going to have Dylan Gabriel starting 12 games, and then at running back, you're going to have Javonte Barnes starting 12 games, and then wide receiver Drake Stoops is going to left tackle is going to be Rouse. He's going to be at the end of the season. He will have started 12 games. Rain center 12 games. Right. I'm going down these columns from left to right. Left guard could be the position where we see Savion Byrd get a couple of starts, Troy Everett get a couple of starts, Caleb Schaefer back in, then they're back up and they're flipping around and they're moving. Maybe one guy plays right side one game, depending on and injuries and stuff like that. I don't think this is going to be settled in training camp. I think Byrd is the guy that they want long term. I think Troy Everett is a guy that they went out and got in terms of increasing competition, competitive depth, right? Increasing the depth. And Caleb Schaefer probably fits in there somewhere in between. Schaefer's played a little tackle, so he could kick out and play some tackle if they needed him to. I loved what Brent Venables said about Josh Bates. Called him a wild animal. Not a honey badger. He's not at that level. Not yet, but a wild animal. I thought that was fascinating.
Not just
a guy that's going to get some snaps at some point in his career very soon.
Not just calling him a wild animal, talking about the physicality and being like, hey, man, those are your teammates. Like, so yeah. if there's been any if you ever hear or see of any camp kerfuffles, I have a lot of reason to believe that Josh Bates is that guy that's in the middle of it. Brent Reynolds also was like, I'd rather hold guys back than have to beg them for physicality. But I just love that that's a young guy that's like, I don't care. I will come in and I will fight you.
We got some good FaceTime yesterday with Bill Beatonbow as well. He was really good, as he always is. But just in terms of, Bill, you've got 4 guys that have a position locked down. Let's talk about the guard position. He was very forthcoming with a lot of that guard talk. Now, I asked him specifically about the tackle position. They lost 2 offensive tackles that could have come back this year. They lost both guys to the NFL draft. One of them was a first rounder. Okay. I asked him, are you more athletic at offensive tackle this year than you were last year? He said, that's a good question. Could be. Then he went into talking about both Walter Rouse and Tyler Guyton. Let's be honest, Tyler Guyton is a freak. I don't know if you've seen his preseason photo day montage that he did, but he's got he's 6'7", 300 and something pounds, 308, 310, whatever. And he's got a football and he's making a move like I can't remember whose dunk it was, but he's going like between the legs with the football and his legs are up in the air. He looks like he's got a 40-inch vertical jump going. I'm assuming that that's an optical illusion. It's not 40 inches, but it looks like 40 inches. Tyler Guyton's a freak, and frankly, Walter Rouse, 4-year starter at Stanford, he's back from that shoulder injury. He is that dude. Those are two. If those 2 guys stay healthy, I think Oklahoma's going to be set at offensive tackle.
Yeah, just talking to some people behind the scenes, it really sounds like Tyler Guyton. If you sent Tyler Guyton to the NFL Draft Combine right now,
yep,
and didn't have any of the drills or anything, you just put him through all the physical stuff, the bench, 40, vertical, broad, all that stuff, and that was all anyone went through, that Tyler Guyton would be gone in the first round because he is that gifted physically. And that's why I think you saw TCU when they knew he wasn't going to be their starting right tackle a couple years ago. How different ways can we put this just physical monster on the field, use him as an H-back, stuff like that. Now the task for Bill Beatonbow is, thankfully he got a couple of starts under his belt last year due to Wanya Morris' situation to start the year and then Wanya Morris opting out. So it shouldn't be like the Guyton walks out and everything's all his head's spinning, all that. Yeah. He's got that starting experience. So now he can really hone in that technique to be the offensive lineman, the offensive tackle that Beatonbow needs him to be. Because Rouse on the other side, talking to him back in spring, it just felt like he acknowledged, I picked up some bad habits while I was hurt, and I just need to unkink that hose a little bit and get back to playing with great technique. And he seems so intelligent and self-aware and self-critical that I think a guy like Bill Beatonbow and a guy like Walter Rouse are going to get along great.
Let's move over to wide receiver, Ryan. we know, again, two of the names, Farouk and Stoops. The third name we don't know, but boy,
It's the
based off
Gavin Freeman shot.
it's yeah, based off yesterday, it seems like the third guy we should know. It's Gavin Freeman.
The Hulk Hogan, who's the third man, Gavin Freeman memes, send those in at all_Sooners. But no, Brent Venables talked about he had like an emphatic defense of a criticism that I don't think was being levied by the media. So I don't know if that was fans elsewhere or whatever. He talked about at the podium, like when I came out and said that Gavin Freeman was our most consistent, best guy throughout camp, everyone's like, oh, that might not be good. And he's like, do not undersell Gavin Freeman. He was like, he's always open. He's twitchier than you think. He takes care of everything. And again, limited reps last year, just a handful of touches. One of them, huge touchdown on a reverse. You want twitch? There's your twitch. One of them laying out against Kansas. You want tracking the ball, getting open, sure hands. There's all that. Now I think it's just going to be, again, we talk about this a lot. I feel like Gavin Freeman, not like, oh my gosh, Gavin Freeman's leading the team in receiving, but Gavin Freeman is the nailed-on third highest catcher, yards, all that. I would not be stunned at all. That's kind of my expectation at this point.
Yeah, I think the way to, if I remember correctly, Brent was talking about his comments, reaction to his comments from Big 12 Media Day was, well, if Gavin Freeman's our best receiver in that situation, then we must suck at receiver. That's the way he said it. And he said, trust me, we don't suck at receiver. So he's looking forward to getting Gavin Freeman in some situations. I tend to think that the third receiver on a team that has a prolific quarterback, a play caller, they run up tempo, needs to have about 50 catches to be operating peak efficiency, blowing people out that they should blow out, competing with the people that are really good. You need to have a third receiver that's got about 50 catches. Can Gavin do that? Maybe. Not if he's running gadgets and reverses and jet sweeps and trick passes and stuff like that. They need to involve him as a receiver and say, okay, you can do the gadget stuff. You can have some trick plays, but we need you to catch 45, 50 balls this year. Is that asking too much? I don't think so.
I'm just pulling it up right now as far as what Oklahoma had last year.
It's like 39.
The spread was pretty varied last year as far as the receiving goes. Marvin Mims, your top pass catcher, and he had 54 receptions. Then you had Willis at 39, Farouk at 37, Stoops at 39, Eric Gray at 33, Theo Weiss at 19. I kind of think that the most likely outcome is probably something that looks a lot similar this year, because I don't know if Farouk's a guy that's going to be like a 70-catch guy or something like that as far as taking that huge step up. So if you got like basically three guys at 40 and one at 60, then Farouk, Freeman, Stoops, and you're looking for, it was an Angelo Anthony or something like that. I just think for Oklahoma, the step forward in the passing game this year would be that of your four highest catch guys, you're not also having to factor in the running back and the tight end. Like, you need to see more of those receivers putting those numbers up there. And then when you look at this guy had 15 catches, maybe that's where a Gavin Sawchuk comes in. Hey, 25 catches, that's where Austin Stogner lives. I think that would be a great sign for the development track that Emmett Jones is kind of known for. I think that if you kind of don't have that, then you're going to have Austin Stogner catch 35 balls. And you're going to have Sawchuk and Barnes combined for probably 40 touches out of the backfield. And I just don't think that's what you want when they talk about score from far, dime time, pass, all that. That's what Jeff Lebby wants to be. And you saw that wasn't really what they were last year. And I think that catch distribution showed it.
Yeah. I think you're, everything, again, all things being equal, everything being top efficiency, I think your top guy needs to have about 80, your second guy needs to have about 60, and then your third guy needs to have about 40 or 50 to be able to move the chains consistently, to blow people out, to have a lot of offensive plays. That's where I'm going with that. I know my standards for some of this are based on the Wild West show I saw from Kevin Wilson and Sam Bradford in 2008, where he threw, and they had some big time receivers on that team as well. One question that I asked Jeff Leber yesterday was, we got to see at the start of the open practices back in the spring, we got to see a lot of throws to the running back. Is that product of just when practice starts and we happen to be standing there, or is that product of, hey guys, our receivers aren't that good this year, let's throw to the running backs? And he said, oh, it's strictly you guys being there at the start of practice because that's what we always start with. So I was reading something into something that I thought I saw, apparently. So I totally believe him. But I do think the running backs are going to be a lot more involved in the passing game this year, whether it's Marcus Major. He was one of those guys that was at the front of the line when they were doing those running back to receiver drills. Marcus Major was catching a lot of passes. Gavin and Javante were catching a lot of passes, and then the two freshmen were catching a lot of passes as well as Chapman, McCown, somebody like that, walking on, coming off the bench. He's a third down, kind of get lost in the shuffle, kind of offensive threat. Look out for him as well. He could have a little bit of a Gavin Freeman impact on this offense as well, I think. But we'll see. You mentioned Emmett Jones. Lots of love yesterday for Emmett Jones. Most of the conversation was about his impact as a recruiter, and he is reeling them in on the recruiting trail, Ryan. But just as it was interesting. You talked to several offensive coaches about Emmett Jones. What is it about Emmett Jones? Oh, he's got a lockdown on Dallas. North Texas is his territory. He helps with guys from other positions who are from North Texas, from Dallas specifically, and a lot and beyond. Not just North Texas, not just DFW, but the state of Texas. He is an extremely valuable asset in the recruiting game, according to the other members of the staff.
Yeah, I would not be really stoked if I were an opposing school and I saw Emmett Jones and Jay Valai walk in together.
Yeah.
Not just because of their energy and just the kind of passion and the personalities that they are, but for all of that is one heck of a recruiting hub to have those two guys pounding the state of Texas. And we know everyone on this staff is going to recruit Texas. You know that. It's Oklahoma. You've got to recruit Texas. But those guys specifically take it to another level. And I think that's why you've seen that Emmett Jones aggressively knows he needs to bring an influx of talent into this wide receiver room. That's why he's got 5 guys verbally committed. And kind of talking to him about his development philosophy and things, because I posed a question of, hey, it feels like you've got a couple of different groups of wide receivers, your Anthonys, your Pettaways, your Thompsons. Those guys feel like your burners.
Yep.
LV Bunkley Shelton, Farouk, Stoops, Freeman in a different way, kind of your possession guys. You've got a couple of bigger bodies, Gibson, Nick Anderson, that they can kind of give that. Do you want to grab one of each and that be your lineup? What are you looking for? And he's like, yeah, you want to be able to throw different body types, but he's like, I'm not doing my job correctly if I do not take everyone's weakness and try to accentuate your strength, but also erase those weaknesses and make everyone a complete receiver. And I think that's good news when you look at all the different body types in this wide receiver room. That's good news when you look at all the different body types in the 2024 class committed. It's just going to be that's the thing I'm most looking forward to seeing is finally, we've talked about so many question marks around wide receiver all year long. What is it finally going to look like when those guys get a chance to make plays on Saturdays?
Yeah. Good point. Now, listen, Emmett Jones yesterday was asked about Gavin Freeman. We talked about Emmett Jones. We've talked about Gavin Freeman. Now let's talk about Emmett Jones and Gavin Freeman. He said he got a text when he got to Texas Tech. He was the receivers coach at Texas Tech. He got a text saying, we don't need to recruit Gavin Freeman anymore. From presumably, the new Texas Tech coach, right? Joey McGuire and that staff apparently. I'm I'm connecting dots here. Apparently didn't want to necessarily recruit Gavin Freeman as a scholarship receiver anymore. Emmett Jones goes to Oklahoma. Gavin Freeman commits to Oklahoma, walks on at Oklahoma. Gavin Freeman yesterday to that report said it's not hard to tell when you're not wanted. Stuff like this can really hurt a player and his confidence, especially when it's your only Power 5 offer. But it didn't affect me because I knew the player that I was, and people wonder why I took a walk-on over a full-ride scholarship. To which Gavin Freeman himself replied to his own tweet and said, it had nothing to do with Coach Jones. It's all on the head coach. He makes those decisions. Got a little sparks going between Texas Tech and Oklahoma in their final year in the Big 12 together, and they don't even play.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and if you remember, that was Matt Wells, his staff, when Matt Wells was still at Tech, they wanted Gavin Freeman. And then after that coaching change, that's when that happened. And so that's something that Emmett Jones, he had talked about, that when he got the job at Oklahoma and Gavin was in that room, he immediately wanted to reach out and be like, hey, man, this is the situation.
We're still good, right?
And he was stoked to have him in his room because that was a guy that he had wanted to keep on anyway. And so Emmett Jones, too, talked. He's like, Gavin Freeman, we can do whatever we want with Gavin Freeman. We can use him out of the backfield. We can use him over the middle. We can tell him just go get open. I think where you're really going to see some Gavin Freeman be a difference maker is we saw a little bit against Texas Tech, a lot against Florida State. Dillon Gabriel, very comfortable to use his legs behind the line of scrimmage, move the pocket, try to extend plays. And I don't think Oklahoma's wide receivers as a whole did a great job of ever working back to Dillon Gabriel in those situations to try and continue to get open when things broke down. Feels like Gavin Freeman, from everything, learning from Drake Stoops, all that stuff, he will know, hey, I need to make something happen, a little bit of off-schedule football that doesn't often kind of get in there. I feel like that could be something where he can use that fast twitch, change of direction, burst of speed to say, I need to work back to Dillon Gabriel, and I think that's where he'll end up being a really big piece of this offense.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting the way Venables, and you mentioned it earlier, but Venables referenced a couple of times, I think, he's always open in practice. He's always wide open in practice. That says something. So watch out for him. He's going to be fun. If they don't develop a third wide receiver, they're going to have to throw the ball to the tight end. I got some good questions off to Joe John Finley yesterday about the use of his tight ends and how the position is developing and things like that. But one of the questions that I wanted to highlight on here, we can't get to everybody and every question and every coach because it would be a 5-hour podcast and nobody wants to listen to a 5-hour podcast. But I'll just throw this out. I asked him about Braden Willis's development, enticing other tight ends in the recruiting game. Let's see. Braden Willis, 7th-round pick, number 247 overall. Pretty soon, Joe John Finley's able to lock down a guy like Devon Mitchell. 5-star tight end, reclassifying. He's the future of the position at OU, Devon Mitchell is. Joe John Finley said, yeah, I can show recruits how he was developed, how he went from this to an NFL guy, being coached by me and the staff. I thought that was interesting because there's a very good possibility at the tight end position. You look at some of the guys they are recruiting, some of the guys that they have recruited and that have currently on the roster. Tight end position could be very vital. And I think, was it Brent that said that? It's going to be a vital position, or maybe it was Joe John. I'm getting my wires crossed here. But it's going to be an extremely important position for this offense moving forward.
Yeah, Brent talked about you don't want to have tight ends that can't do anything for. He's like, we've got this basically spot on the roster. You want those guys to be difference makers. He had talked about that. Jeff Lebby, I had asked him just like, hey, ideal world, what's that rotation look like for you? You're happy with the depth, all that stuff? He said 6 to 7 receivers and 2 to 3 tight ends. So to get to 2 to 3 tight ends on this roster, you're talking about Austin Stogner, which with Stogner, you're just hoping he stays healthy. Talking about Blake Smith, a guy that's had 2 career catches during the regular season and 1 great club catch in a spring game. So that's development that has to happen there. And then behind that, we talked about Caden Helms off the top, getting Jason Llewellyn acclimated, be a later season probably addition, or You're having to get down the ranks of guys that haven't played tight end before as far as that room. So it's important on the recruiting trail, but it's also going to be important because those recruits could come in and take immediate jobs just due to some unfortunate luck with injuries that kind of robbed Joe John of the opportunity to develop Caden Helms and Jason Llewellyn all throughout the spring.
We'll finish this segment with this, Ryan. Your favorite guy to talk to yesterday. We got to talk to 5 summer transfers, okay? Guys who came in after spring football who we haven't talked to before. So we got those videos at allsooners.com, also on my YouTube channel. And we got to talk to, I think, 7 or 8 true freshmen coming in. One of the true freshmen who didn't come in was Dave McCulloch, Deshaun's little brother, right? So don't know what's going on there. It would have been nice to get some perspective on playing in the same camp as his big brother, that kind of thing. But so many newcomers, Ryan, and I'll just say this. My favorite guy to talk to, my new favorite guy is Philip Paya, defensive tackle from Utah State, transferred from Michigan. This is his 7th year of college football. My guy is 24 years old. He's got a degree from Michigan, and when he leaves OU, he'll have 2 postgraduate degrees, including a master's. And he said, if that's the least I get out of this, that's a pretty solid deal. So 7 years of college football. I love it. And you talk about somebody who's relaxed, expressive, funny, engaging. Watch that interview with Philip Paya, and you will come away with much the same feeling. My new favorite guy.
Yeah, I would have loved to talk to DJ Terry just because for whatever reason I gravitate to offensive and defensive linemen for Fred. I don't know why that happens, but maybe it's because I'm just 5'9" and 10 pounds like dripping wet. I unfortunately was not able to chop it up with all the new players coming in because the radio schedule stuff when that came in and out. But yeah, I'm a Jay Valai guy, although Todd Bates did deliver the quote of the day when talking about the 300-pound plus guys that they have. Ain't no better solution on this earth than girth, is Todd Bates talking about improved defensive line play. I would listen to Todd Bates and Jay Valai talk about literally anything.
Yeah, Bates also said something along the lines of, one enemy in your tent is more dangerous than 1,000 enemies outside your tent.
We also, first off, incredible that he would love like the Battle of the Bulge documentaries of all the like the Germans having the American speaking Germans undercover, all the English speaking but American accent. Anyway, we're getting into Brady Trantham territory. I'll save everyone there. Bill Dino also revealed that he didn't know what Netflix was until COVID, and now he like can't stop. He's like, you guys know me. He's like, I watch film, I coach football, I go home, I don't do a whole lot. He's like, now you can't get me off Netflix when I get home.
It's good that he cut the cord, right?
Yeah. Well, he said he loves like Law and Order SVU, all that stuff. I was like, well, Criminal Minds, and I think Jim's like, well, you'll never run out of those shows, and you can just hammer them all on Netflix. He's like, exactly.
That's good stuff. I did see they did put both Philip Paya and DeJoun Terry next to each other in the Stadium Club. The stadium tipped a little bit because they're both significantly over 300 pounds. The 5 300-pounders that they have on the interior defensive line now. They can win now. They can win later with those kind of guys. Those are the guys that are going to, and they need some, frankly, we'll talk with Randall about this coming up, but they need some new guys as well. They need some young guys, some recruits. Ryan, as always, thanks for jumping on. We appreciate it.
Of course. And all you out there, good luck with all the marriages and relationships and everything that you guys are dealing with. I'm happy I have a much simpler existence.
Coming up next on the show, Randall's going to join us. We're going to talk some OU recruiting. Lots to get to. That's all next on the AllSooners Podcast. All right, final segment of the AllSooners Podcast. And if you like the podcast, give us a rating. 5 stars is always best. We like 5 stars just like the college football coaches do. Share us on social media. Watch us on YouTube. Share, rate, subscribe, like, leave us a comment, all that good stuff. Since our last podcast, holy cow, has the OU recruiting staff been busy. I call them recruiting staff because there's not even any football going on. They're not coaching currently. They're recruiting. Randall's joined us to talk about it. He's been all over it. OU has, since our last podcast, OU has received 5 verbal commitments. I guess 6, because today they got another one. Kamori Moore, defensive lineman. Elijah Thomas, wide receiver. Michael Patterson-McDonald, quarterback. And then yesterday, Brendan Zurbrugg. Michael Patterson-McDonald is a cornerback. What am I saying? And then quarterback yesterday, Brendan Zurbrugg. So 5, I overestimated. Bergen Kaiser was a walk-on today. We're going to tell you about every one of them. Let's start there, though. Whenever you get quarterback news, Randall, you got to start with your quarterback news. Zurbrugg was a guy, I think a 3-star recruit who was committed previously to Syracuse and then flipped to Northwestern, but now he's a Sooner.
Yeah, and I think that, we've kind of mentioned it before, but he really brings something different to the table than Michael Hawkins does. I think we can see this more of a, not replacing Michael Hawkins, but just bringing in additional competition for not only Hawkins, but everybody in the quarterback room. If Dillon Gabriel leaves after this year, then, you would be scheduled to have only Jackson Arnold and Michael Hawkins on campus the following year, which, could put you in a similar situation to where, the Sooners were when they played Texas last year. And obviously Brent Venables, no one associated with Oklahoma wants that to ever happen again. And so, you get another guy in here who has a different skill set. He can kind of switch up the pace if you do have to call on him. And, he just brings more depth, more competition to that room. Hawkins, we've talked about, he's kind of got he's got a good arm. He's really good at a lot of the quarterback stuff. Not that Zurbrug's not, but Zurbrugg is a great athlete. He's a really good runner. He's a star track athlete. He's a hurdler, so it's not like he's just running straight line speed. He's got some athleticism in there with that. And if you watch his film, you can really see that. It's not just him taking a read option, going untouched up the sideline. He's, cutting through defenders, breaking tackles, things like that. So, he's a guy who's willing to, he's not going to, at least in high school, he's not going to slide. He's trying to get those yards, even though, he's not heavy, but he's very mobile, very mobile. Really a lot of quick, short routes are what I saw on his highlights. So it'll be interesting to see when he gets to campus, what that arm looks like when they let him kind of uncork it and chuck it downfield. Sorry, I was just going to say.
And we talked yesterday about his athletic ability. When you play football in the state of Ohio, you're pretty good, and he's been wanted. He's been recruited by several Division I programs, and now he's adding depth and athleticism to a position where Oklahoma has had in the past depth and athleticism, but not currently. I talked to Jeff Lebby yesterday at Media Day and asked him specifically, Dillon Gabriel does have his 2020 COVID season left over, right? He can come back next year if he wants to, right? And he said, yes, he can. He's eligible to do that. And I said, have you talked to Dillon Gabriel about 2024? And he said, no, we have not. We're talking about, Dillon Gabriel and I are talking about Tuesday, which was yesterday. So they're focused on, what's next, what's the immediate game plan, how do we get better this year, that whole thing. But there's the possibility that Dillon Gabriel, guys, comes back in 2024. Possibility.
Yeah, and I mean, even if he is back next year, bringing in Zurbrugg is just another depth piece in that room. And whenever he is gone, it makes you not so thin there. And like I think you said previously, quarterbacks transfer all the time. You can only play one, so a lot of these guys transfer. It gives you some insurance, a safety blanket, if you will, if one of your guys does transfer, and that could be Gabriel if he doesn't have the year that he wants, and Jackson Arnold just ends up pushing for that job. Not predicting that, but it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, that's true too. All right, OU's always looking for new defensive linemen, depth on defensive linemen. We're going to talk about Stone and Winery and Nigel Smith and those guys here in a minute, but they got a commitment from Kamori Moore out of Kansas City.
Yeah, and this is a guy who, whenever I watched this film, the first thing I noticed was his pad level and his first step quickness. I know that in the past, OU's done really, really well with linemen who have good motors and great first step quickness. I know he hasn't necessarily done a lot at the NFL level, but Perion Winfrey, that was his real skill set too, is that first step was elite. And Kamori Moore, who's a lot of times playing head up on a center, The quickness that he has in that first step is really, really impressive for a guy who's listed at 310 pounds. You usually don't see that. He's also about 6'1", so he's not as tall, but that helps him get underneath the pad level, and especially whenever he's playing center or playing against college centers who are bigger. Creed Humphrey's like 6'4", 6'5". Not that. So when you're playing against bigger guys like that at 6'1", it really helps you get underneath that pad level, which is important for a guy like his position. Another important thing for him is he's actually teammates on the defensive line with Williams and Nwaneri. So that never hurts to get the guy you want's teammate. But more in his own right, he's a 2025 recruit, very, very talented. He's the first commitment in the trenches for the Sooners in 2025. I think he also had offers from Nebraska, some other Power 5 schools. So this is a really, really good pickup for the Sooners, and he seems like he's been in for a long time. He was at the Brent Venables Elite Camp earlier this summer, and he's been back since.
Yeah, he said on Twitter, it was my goal to be the first guy in this class on the defensive line to commit, and he did just that. And the fact that that they're still that pipeline to Kansas City is still wide open.
Yeah.
Jamar Mosey and those guys sending some good players to Oklahoma.
And, they need
Nwaneri.
They do. And, I mean, aside from just Lee Summit North specifically, we were talking about Ohio being a really strong area for football. Kansas City's come up as a really strong area. They produced a lot of players. Isn't PJ Adebawore from the Kansas City area?
Yeah, North Kansas City, yeah.
Yeah, so that's definitely an area that the Sooners really want to keep that pipeline open, like you mentioned, and of course specifically with Jamar Mosey and Lee Summit North.
Yep. All right, then the Sooners got a commitment from a wide receiver, Elijah Thomas, local kid.
Yeah. This is another kid that was at the Brent Venables Elite Camp earlier this summer, a 2025 receiver. He's about 6'1", 6'2", maybe 180, 185 pounds. Really, really fast. When I saw him, one thing I was impressed about was how quickly his legs turn over for a guy who's 6'1", 6'2". He's really, really strong in his lower half, and you can tell that by the way he runs. When he takes those steps, he propels himself forward, and that's going to only increase as he gets older, and especially when he gets on campus. This is a guy who I could see definitely putting on more weight onto his frame when he gets here, in addition to that speed. He plays for Chakotah High School, and if you watch his film, he is so fast that they'll just throw him these bubble screens and just let him go. These tunnel screens, bubble screens, he just kills these. I think they're a 3A school, so he just kills these 3A kids running through defenders. He's obviously got the downfield stretching ability because he is so fast. And, that's something that we saw at the Brent Venables Elite Camp. He was beating 4-star defensive backs that are a year older than him down the field. And, he really impressed the staff. He came to the OU camp with an offer, and then after impressing the staff again, that they were really hard trying to get him. He had offers from Alabama, from some other big-time schools, but he said he grew up an OU fan. So for the Sooners to get him, that's a great get. And something we talked about yesterday is that Oklahoma is really the OK Preps class of 2025 is really strong. And Oklahoma has been having strong recruiting classes for the past few years. But when you're able to recruit in-state, it's big for the Sooners, especially in these coming years.
Yeah, there's something to be said, there's no doubt, about track speed. Track speed is amazing. You see somebody like Brennan Thompson has elite track speed. But someone like Elijah Thomas, who's fast, you can see when you watch him play, he's fast, but he's got functional speed. So imagine yourself, you're running in your lane and you're running as fast as you can from point A to point B. That's track speed. Right. Football is what's my assignment? What's the defensive back doing over here? Where's the safety? I need to dial it down and get into my break, into and out of my break, or make a move here, or make some kind of step here to finish this route because my quarterback needs me to come back to the football. Functional football speed is different than track speed. Track speed helps, there's no question. But when you watch Elijah Thomas play, you're seeing football speed. He's doing things. He's processing the game. He's not only running fast, but he's processing the game at a high level.
And I would say that also applies to their other 2025 receiver commit, Grayson Harris. If you watch him play, you're like, wow, this kid is a blazer. He is really fast. Yeah. But when you talk to him, he says he's never run sub-11 in the 100. which, I mean, there's linebackers that run sub 1100s. So
right, that's what I'm talking about. Exactly.
I guarantee you Grayson Harris isn't slower than these linebackers, but track speed and football speed, like you're saying, is different.
Yeah, and then OU stayed local, very local this time, and you've been all over this kid's recruitment since you joined the staff since day one, really. Michael Patterson McDonald, a legacy player at Oklahoma. We're told that his dad played at Oklahoma, walked on at Oklahoma in 2009. Tell us about Michael and what a boost this was for the OU recruiting class.
Yeah, so Michael's a great kid. He's very, very personable. He's great at building relationships, and I think that will help him recruit other people into this class. And also when he's on campus, obviously he'll be a freshman, but he's a guy that is not gonna, he's going to take it seriously. He's going to work hard, and that's what you want. I mean, obviously, Brent Venables, they're really good about doing their checks and things like that, so they wouldn't offer a kid who's not like that, but with Michael, it's really, really evident that he cares about the sport. He really wants to be great, and he will take it seriously. And I think a lot of that does come from having a father who played college football. He knows what it takes, and he played at OU. So, he told me back in May that when OU offered him, it meant a lot to him, that it brought a lot. I think his exact words were, it brought a lot of joy. And so hearing that and knowing that OU, stayed in contact with him, we've heard with some recruits or even in previous staffs that, they'll offer a kid and then won't talk to him for months. And that's not what happened with Michael. He said that every day it was a different coach texting him, asking him if he wanted to come to the stadium, asking him if he wanted to talk ball, whatever it was. And it seems like the relationship that they built with him really went a long way for him. Going out of the OU coaching staff, going out of their way to show you that we're not just throwing you this offer because you're a local kid from Westmore. We want you here. We want you in Norman. We want you in a Sooners uniform. And he hits. He really, really loves to hit people, whether it's him flying down from the safety spot to nail a receiver coming across the middle, or whether it's a running back. He is not afraid to go downhill and deliver a shot. And that is something that the OU defensive back coaches love. And I've also talked to him and asked him what he thinks his biggest strength is. That's something I really find interesting with recruits. How well, what do they think about their own game? What do they think is their biggest attribute? And I guess not really surprised, but he said that his strongest attribute was his leadership ability. And that's something that, we've heard at OU Media Day yesterday. Brent Venables, Ted Roof, all these guys are talking about leaders and wanting to recruit leaders, get leaders on campus. And, Michael said that was his best attribute. So it seems like skill set wise, personality, these OU and Michael are a perfect fit. They beat out Houston, they beat out Missouri. So, Big 12 and SEC schools to get him, which is always solid. And the last thing that's really important about him is he's best friends with David Stone. Michael said after his commitment that they met each other when they were 8 years old. They played together all the way till they were 12, and they've still been close friends since. Said it's always been their dream to play together. He said they even hoped to play together senior year of high school, but that it didn't quite work out. But they'll have a chance to play together in college. And Michael specifically said he's trying to get David Stone. He's trying to get Caden Durham. He's trying to get Nigel Smith. He's trying to get Williams and Winery. So it sounds like he's really going to be active on the recruiting trail, trying to help get more guys in this class, and specifically one of his best friends, David Stone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Stone is huge. Stone is a centerpiece of this, and Winery would be as well, the number 1 or number 3 overall player in this class, depending on who you follow. Yeah. Sooners under the stars, party at the Palace. Yeah. The OU coaching staff, once August 1st, the dead period ended, they've been super busy.
Yeah. Michael and Bergen Kaiser, 2 of the commits that we've mentioned today, were both at Party at the Palace over the weekend. Kamori Moore was at Sooners Under the Stars earlier in the week. So was Elijah Thomas. So obviously these things are producing really well. We've been told that there might be some other commitments coming down the line that came from that. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. And, I did see today that Andy Bass, who was also at the Sooners Under the Party at the Palace event over the weekend, said that he has an announcement coming tomorrow, which was shortly after he dropped his top 3 with OU in his top 3. Now, Andy told me that he was committing later this month, so I would imagine that tomorrow might not be a commitment and maybe a commitment date, but I don't know anything for certain, and we'll see what he says. But that's another player to watch that could have had that was at the party at the Palace this weekend.
He told you yesterday, August 1st, that he's committing later this month, which he's got a 29-day window now to commit.
Yeah.
So sometime in the next 29 days. You mentioned Bergen Kaiser, preferred walk-on, committed today, 2024. He's a defensive end from Edmond Santa Fe. Kid also plays quarterback, tight end, and punter. Very talented athlete.
Yeah, and I mean, if seeing him in person, you're like, the first time I saw him in person, I didn't even know who he was, but he caught my eye because I was like, wow, that kid's big. You see big kids all the time, but you don't see kids with good weight all the time in high school necessarily, and he has really good weight. If you look at his weight room numbers, they're really impressive for a kid who hasn't even started his senior year of high school yet. So you love to see that. And the offer list that he has is pretty impressive for a kid that OU was able to convince to walk on. I mean, Oklahoma State, Tulsa, UNLV. These are programs that will compete for bowl games. I mean, Oklahoma State, that's a Big 12 team that has competed for the college football playoff as recently as 2 seasons ago. So if you're able to get a commitment from a guy who had a scholarship offer from Oklahoma State, and you're able to convince him to come to Norman, compete in that edge room, OU's walk-ons are given the chance to compete. We've seen that before. And so if you're able to tell a kid that, hey, you have the chance to compete, to prove yourself, and to earn a scholarship, then that goes a long way. He, again, was at the party at the Palace. He was at the Brent Venables Elite Camp earlier this summer, too. So he's a guy that, they've built this relationship with, cultivated this relationship all summer. And it seems like they really let him know that he would be valued if he came here. He's not just an end-of-the-roster guy. He's not just a normal walk-on. This is a kid that could compete for playing time if he performs well. And, again, he's teammates with Josh Isosa, who is a 3-star offensive tackle that OU is really hoping to get in their 2024 class. Josh Isosa is committing on August 14th. So getting a commitment from his teammate definitely helps.
There you go. Okay, Randall, give us kind of your gut feeling of what's going to happen with David Stone, Williams Nwaneri, and also Nigel Smith over the next 30 days. What's going to be their kind of path? Do they drop some top fives? Do they drop some? I think Stone has already done some of that, but just in terms of, are they going to make news? Are they going to be out there? Are they going to visit? What's your thoughts?
Well, Stone is back in Florida. IMG Academy has their summer practices already. I think most high schools across the nation now are probably into their high school practices. But Stone is announcing his commitment on August 26th, I believe is the date, which is actually a televised game, IMG Academy versus St. Joseph's Prep. St. Joseph's Prep is a school in Philadelphia, but they're flying down to IMG Academy to play. And I would imagine that at some point during the broadcast, that is when he'll commit. I can't imagine that he would say that that's his commitment date and then not commit on the ESPN broadcast. That would be really surprising. So Sooner fans, definitely tune in to ESPN on that day. His top 6, Oregon, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Florida, Miami, and Michigan State. It appears that Michigan State might be the biggest contender for Stone right now. And we've seen Michigan State take recruits from Oklahoma right out of Norman recently.
Sure.
So that's definitely not one to write off, even if the Spartans haven't been the most competitive team recently. They could still do it. And so I would assume that when the commitment date rolls around, that Oklahoma is his choice right now. But again, recruiting, things can change very quickly. Miami and Florida were 2 of his top 6 schools, and he's in Florida this whole month and the rest of the season for his high school. So those schools could obviously make a late run. But right now, it seems like he really likes Oklahoma, and especially after getting the commitment from Michael Patterson McDonald, his best friend. I mean, if they talked about playing together for their entire careers, now they'll have the opportunity to. And Stone was already interested in Oklahoma. I mean, it seems like the dots are lining up. But again, you never know in recruiting; things can change quickly. And Nwaneri,
right? And he's flirting with Missouri. Obviously, you got
Right.
Eli Drinkwitz. They're throwing those tweets out, but Waneri's got a date coming up as well.
Yeah, so I've actually heard some conflicting things about that date. Originally, the date was rumored to be August 1st, so yesterday, and then it was rumored to be pushed back to August 7th. I saw yesterday now that it's rumored to be pushed back again to August 14th. If that's true, then that means that he and Josh Isosa would be announcing their commitments on the same date. So it could be a very good or very bad day for the Sooners, depending on how both of those go.
Yeah.
But again, Nwaneri, number one, or one of the top 3 players in the country consensus. Like you said, Missouri is doing everything they can to reel him in. A kid from Missouri. I've heard that Missouri's really pulling out all the NIL stops for this one. And again, you have to expect that OU is going to do the same thing. OU is not small in the NIL fund, and so I would imagine that they'll do whatever it takes to get him here. Like you said, been flirting with Missouri, but I would still assume that whenever he commits, that Oklahoma is the choice right now. And then Nigel Smith, yeah. I would imagine that maybe he releases his top 5 sometime, or a top something or another sometime this month. He told me back in early July that he was planning on committing September 8th. So again, that's Melissa has a game. I can't remember exactly who they play on September 8th, but that's a Friday. They have a game then. I'll be there. And so he's going to commit on that date. All signs are really, really pointing to Oklahoma. When I talked to him, he said he loves the Soul Mission. He said that nowhere else in the country they're doing anything like that. He really loves how it focuses on the players as more than just players, as people, and focuses on how they can improve their lives outside of football, after football, etc. And not only him, that's gone a long way with a lot of recruits, but that was specifically one thing that he mentioned about OU that he liked. He also said that he loved the relationships he has with the coaching staff here. So that's huge for OU. I would imagine that Texas A&M might be the biggest competitor for his services for OU. Says that he likes it there, loves the environment. I mean, 110,000 fans screaming at you. You can't. It's hard to beat that. I understand that, but it seems like he's trending towards OU. Michael specifically mentioned that he wanted to get him and Nwaneri on board. So I imagine that Michael Patterson McDonald will be in their ears a lot. And I would also expect, again, it seems crazy to say this for a third consecutive defensive lineman, but I would expect that right now OU gets his services on September 8th. And I mean, if you can land all 3 of those, that's one of the top 80 players in the country at defensive line, one of the top 15 players in the country as a defensive lineman, and one of the top 3 players in the country, all 3 defensive linemen. So 2 5-stars and a high 4-star. That's a pretty unreal defensive line haul, especially when they already have 2 4-star defensive linemen in the class.
If you get all 3 of those guys and the Jackson Arnold project goes as expected, and they're able to recruit around Jackson Arnold with that defensive line, I think in the SEC, I think they're going to be competing at some point in the next 5 years for a championship in the SEC. And when you compete for a championship in the SEC, you've got a college football playoff berth waiting on you. And you got to get – that's if they get all 3. And you got to get some defensive line.
If they do get all 3, they've got those 3 plus PJ Adebaware, who was a 5-star edge in last year's class. I mean, that would be a monster defensive line going forward into the SEC, but that's what you need. I mean, look at Georgia. Georgia had Travon Walker, who was the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft, and Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis was the top 15 pick also, I believe. I mean, these 2 dudes were monsters in college, and they played together. And they played with a whole other stable of guys who are also in the NFL. Devontae Wyatt, some other guys that I can't remember the names off the top of my head, Nolan Smith. But, I mean, that's the type of group that you have to be competing in the SEC. Because guess what? If OU wants to win the SEC, they have to play Georgia. They have to play Alabama, these schools like that. So just like you said, I agree 100%.
Yeah, I saw a post recently. Georgia had put the draft class was something like 7 5-stars and 5 4-stars or something like that. That's what you need.
Yep.
That's what you need in college football these days. You can't expect to compete for a national championship or in the future an SEC championship if you don't have that in your holster. That's a lot to ask, but it's what's required.
Ask Baker Mayfield. they had the best offense, one of the best offenses we've ever seen, and they couldn't beat Georgia. So obviously, it takes more than just that. I mean, that OU offensive team had a slew of NFL players, talented NFL players too. CeeDee Lamb, Mark Andrews. Obviously, I mean, I don't need to go through the list, but again, like to your point, the offensive on its own won't get it done. You need that defensive line. You need to be strong in the trenches.
Yep. Anything else recruiting wise coming down the pike?
Oh man, I think I mentioned Josh Isosa commitment on the 14th, on August 14th. That one will be big for OU.
Yep.
They only have 2 offensive linemen committed in the 2024 class, 1 tackle, 1 interior offensive lineman. So anytime you can add a third tackle to a third lineman, a second tackle to that class, that's huge. I mean, you'd obviously really like to have more than 2 offensive linemen in the class. And Isosa, he's an in-state kid. You always want to get the in-state kids, even if more obviously for their talent alone. And I don't want to diminish Isosa or anything at all. He's a very talented player, and OU obviously would love to have him. But it goes even further than just that player. When you recruit in state, you build good rapport with that coaches across the state, because they know that you have faith in the players in your state in Oklahoma, and that you're not just passing them by like other staffs were accused of doing. Previous staffs were accused of doing here in Oklahoma. And then,
all right, no, go ahead.
Again, I almost forgot one last thing on the offensive line front. Daniel Akinkunmi, I'm probably butchering his last name. I'm very sorry. He's an NFL Academy offensive lineman from London, and he put OU in his top. I think it was a top 10. So I know that's a long list, but I mean, if you look at the other schools in this top 10, they don't produce offensive linemen like OU does. This is a kid who says that he can play all 5 positions on the offensive line, which is huge. I mean, you love swing guys like that. And Bill Bedenbaugh seems like he's built a pretty good relationship with this kid. It would certainly be intriguing. I don't think OU's ever had a recruit come over from Europe, but it seems like OU's in a really good spot to land him too. So that could be another offensive lineman to watch out for.
Randall, you're going to need to update your passport.
Yeah, go get some NFL Academy, some London games in.
And maybe you'll end up in France too. Who knows?
You never know. You never know. Most people won't get that joke.
Right. No, that's okay. Randall had an opportunity to go to France this year to watch some college football campers, high school campers going to college football, and he didn't have his passport, and he wasn't able to get it before the date. But what an opportunity that would have been. That's going to come up again next year. So get your passport, get the 5-year version or the 10-year version. I don't know what it is.
Definitely need to do that.
Spend yourself a couple $100 and get that passport, get it done, get it lined out. You're going to enjoy it.
AllSooners International.
That's it. AllSooners Global.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, John.
And thank you guys for listening. As always, we'll be back next week on the AllSooners Podcast. You can catch that one and all of our shows on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, iHeart, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. If you have an Amazon-enabled device, just say, Alexa, play for me that AllSooners Podcast. She'll hook you up. It's also posted on our website, allsooners.com. Just click on the player and listen on your phone, your tablet, or your computer. And, of course, all my shows are posted, as always, on my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media, as well as all those interviews we got from Media Day yesterday. Check those out. For Ryan Chapman, for Randall Sweet, I am John Hoover. We'll see you guys.